Welcome to VUC 2019, Visions Under Construction. That's right, and this is something like it's the 736th edition of the VUC. Wait a second, I have a message coming in.
This call may be recorded for quality control Yeah, quality control. Oh, like that's a thing.
Okay, that was our friend Allison Smith, who is at VoiceGal on Twitter, or go check out the ivrvoice.com. And with that, let's move over to my actual camera on settings. I go through this every week, but you know, I'm not that young. All right, we have lossless video. Isn't that wonderful? You know, we have an interesting guest today, Franck Rousseau de Paris, introduced by Hank. So I'm going to say hello to Hank first. Thanks for joining us, Hank, again. And you are now one of our core members. And what are you working on these days?
Right now, I've mostly been doing a lot of preparation for FOSDEM, actually. There's a bunch of panels for ActivityPub. Of course, the phone's ringing as you ask me this question. I'm not. We're getting spam called. I don't know why. Yeah. Anyway, so there's a lot of conversations around the decentralized web and ActivityPub and that sort of thing. And so I've been doing a lot of interactions with people online in preparation for that. Unfortunately, that means I have not been getting a lot of software development in, but that is, as you know, the community aspect is as or more important than this actual code as well. So it's still been somewhat of a productive week.
And you brought us our guest, and I'm going to introduce him right now, Franck Rousseau. Hello, Franck, or Frank, if you're American.
Hello. No, Frank is right. It's German. Originally, it's a German name, but it's written the German way. But you can say Frank. But usually people name me Frank. so you have the right pronunciation.
Okay, and we're going to get to your whole history in just a moment, but I want to introduce Mr. Corrado Mela.
Yes. Good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are.
Thank you, Corrado, for steering us to the correct risotto rice. So we're using it now tonight, and we're having. So what is it? It's not verde, which would be Spanish. It's what is it?
In Italian, it's verde.
Verde. Yeah. Risotto verde.
Green risotto. Green with what? With envy or something?
I think it's like what is it? Asparagus. And, I don't know.
Asparagus. Okay.
Anyway. So what you said you got the rice? Is that a Borio, or is it that you were using a different kind of rice? Or?
Corrado, tell them.
Well, the recommended rice for risotto is Carnaroli.
Yeah.
That's the best.
Right.
Never tried that one. I have to try that.
It's difficult to find, but it's the best. Second choice is Arborio.
That's one I usually use.
Well, you're going to have to look in the supermarket for the other new one. Of course, Michael Graves, who I now see, is with us. Hey, Michael.
Hello. Hi, everybody. We're trying some new tricks today.
Yeah, and I like that. So you got the helmet, Yeah,
I'm being Darth Vader today.
Okay. Franck, we're going to, you don't have to mute anymore. I think you're fine. You're not in a noisy place, right? So Hank is responsible for you being a prisoner today with us. I just wondered, we always start with how you got interested in technology. We all have a story, each of us. I mean, I was like 13 getting electronics magazines in Washington when I lived there. You have a story, I'm sure. What brought you to technology is what we'd be interested in.
Okay. I think it started with 3D. In fact, when I was a teenager, I wanted to make 3D pictures. So I started to use 3D Studio, and it was fine. I enjoyed it, but I was bad at drawing with a pencil and a paper. And so at some point, I thought that it was not possible for me to become a good CG artist. So, and at the same time, my brother built his first website. I saw that and I found it pretty interesting, and I decided to make my own website. It was in fact was not my own website. It was a website we made with a friend, but it was about poetry. But when I did that, I really enjoyed to work on the design, on the UI of the website, and I think at that time I decided to go further in web development. At that time, it was more about building, doing web design. But after that, my brother started his study in computer science, and say, "Oh, it looks cool." So I decided to follow the same path. And when I started to study computer science, I learned how to program, and the more I did software, the more I enjoyed it. And and that's it. And at that time, I decided to become a fully a software engineer. And
so Frank, what other areas have you explored? What were the initial besides 3D? So what did you go on to explore after that? What kinds of things? You know, here in this, I can safely say that, for example, we met Michael Graves. I met Corrado through VoIP, and Hank through Diaspora. Yeah. But what other projects? What were your early interests in tech?
At the beginning, I was mostly interested in building my own project. I think in fact I come to the free and open source community through music, because I listened to a lot of music on the radio, and and I discovered the Creative Commons licenses and all the open music world. And I decided to, when I started working, I was in the consulting business. And at that time, I didn't do much tech. I didn't do much software during the day. So at night, I wanted to have a pet project around software, and I built with a friend, with the author of a broadcast technology. We built a web radio. And I started to, and the idea of this web radio was to broadcast only open music. And we did that for 2 or 3 years. The web radio was not so popular, but we made some compilations that we published on Internet Archives, and we had something like 10,000 of downloads. And it was really, and our blog was followed by hundreds of people. For us, it was a lot. And yeah, I think it was the beginning for me of the idea of building open source projects or related, and and to build things that could profit, that could help causes that have a lot of sense to me.
I have a kind of an off the wall question for you, which is, I think open source is huge here in France. I don't know. I worked in companies here that were doing software, but it wasn't open source stuff. So I don't think any of the people had that mentality. But I have the impression that there is a huge interest in open source software in France. And from the few of the people I've met, do you have any idea why that would be? Is it liberté, etc.? You have any take on that at all? Because I find that interesting. I mean, probably more so than the United States, because the United States, in America, people are interested in it, but they're interested in it if they're doing it. There isn't a general interest. Okay. To me, in France, everyone who's into software probably is more into open source. Do you have any ideas on that? Just out of
yeah, definitely there is a huge community, maybe not huge, but there is a big community in France. It's more related. yeah, it's more related to political aspects because we talk more about libre software, free software with a big F. Not open source is like Richard Stallman says, it's not really a term that is really accepted in the French community. We prefer to talk about libre software, and yeah, and I don't know. It's probably related to the history of France, with was a lot of with very tied to the notion of liberty and solidarity, and so that's two notions that matter a lot to us. So I think that's why there is a different approach of the thing, because when you look at what happened with open source, it's kind of utopia that is made real. You take people from all over the world that don't know each other, and that they work together to without salary to build a common for everyone. So if I describe that to someone who is not in open source, he will say me, okay, it's totally it looks very nice, but it sounds like a fairy tale. But the truth is that it is real, and I think this is what in France makes it really attractive, because many French people see that. Many software engineers in France see that, and I think that is what they attract them to the concept of sharing sources and contributing to it to them. And yeah, there is definitely probably the community is very active. And especially we have a lot of events, and there is this big website in France named Linux FR, which is the opportunity for people to meet and see that there are many to share the same idea of software, and I think it helps to have this all this yes. To foster this community.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And Frank, we're going to start talking about your two topics in just a second. Yeah. But I'm curious from Corrado to ask about, because he's from Italy, and also he has a question. I don't know if it's related to what I was thinking, which I was going to ask him, whether the Italians, because we have a couple of really good friends in Italy, right? Miteco, and a few others. Go ahead, Corrado.
Yeah, like Lorenzo Miniero and other people. I think that rather than America to be the focal point here, America is probably the exception in open source. America is much more corporate, is much more bound to the big players like Microsoft, like Apple, like Oracle. They all have a strong base commercially in America. So open source is a bit ostracized probably in the United States, whereas everywhere else, it's possibly the open source communities are probably more open and more also in the open. They don't have a problem with recognition, and more like so in countries in Europe, and especially in countries in, let's call it, developing countries, where the economy is not that strong, and it's not always possible to have the last and the latest and the greatest operating system and programs that you have to pay for. So it's born out of necessity rather than virtue from me.
Let me just mention one thing that people may not know who are listening. Obviously, if you're interested in open source, you do know this, but the point is, what does that mean, open source? It means that the source code is available, and that means that it's peer review. When you publish a paper, say a medical report or something like that, it's peer reviewed. So doctors, specialists look at it, they review it. In the case of code, open source code can be reviewed because you can see the source code, so you know all its faults and all its strengths. And that's why open source is a big thing for a lot of people, because it means that if you're a security expert, for example, you can go over open source code, you can look at it and see, I mean, let's face it, you'd have to have the time to do this, but if you do it, you can see the value of the code, you can find security holes in it, and so on. So it's not just that it's free, it's also the open source aspect of it. Anyway, I just wanted to clear that up for people who may not understand it. Frank, we're going to, or Frank, I want to say Frank, actually. We're going to get into how you started what you're doing. We'll get into the personal server project in a moment, but let's get into CGWire. What can you tell us about it? Who is it for? How did you get started with it?
Okay.
And by the way, before you
start,
let's give the, I'm sorry, I should have said this before. Before you start, the URL, which is, remind me of the URL so that people can go look at it while listening.
CG-wire.com.
Okay, CG-wire.
wire.com.
No, hyphen is good. Okay, so how did this get started, Frank?
Before going into the story, maybe I should explain you how does an animation movie work. When you build a movie, you have a lot of it requires a lot of CG artists to work together. It can be from 10 to 200 CG artists. That's fine. They do great work and they build amazing pictures. But to make sure that everything happens well and in the right time, you need an infrastructure. And this infrastructure is built by people who are mainly production managers and on one side and technical directors on the other side. Production managers are more focused on the budget and the human aspect of the collaboration. And technical directors are more focused on automation and making sure that everything that is produced can be sent to the next CG artist, and at the end make sure that everything can be wrapped up and be sent as a whole movie. And this and all these people, of course, use a lot of software and needs tools. And the other thing to understand is that the CG world and the VFX world are mainly based on proprietary softwares with poor APIs. They are great at doing beautiful pictures, but when it's about the APIs, it's not really well designed. So most of the jobs of the technical directors is based on finding hacks to plug software between each other. And it's even more hacky that people movie productions are done under a lot of pressure. So it's really interesting. And the other thing to understand is that most pipeline technical directors comes from the RCG artists initially. So they are very creative when they find solutions for problems. So in that context, when I started to work when I started my professional activity, I did first an internship in animation studio. Then I went to consulting for a few years, and then I went back to the CG world, and it was in fact during that project I worked for a company that was built by the main French studios, and that gather their knowledge to build softwares for the whole French industry. The project didn't went well, but at that time I met a lot of people and I noticed some problematics that were shared by most of the studios. Then the project stopped. I started to build a company named Cozy Cloud. So I will speak about it later. Then at some point I had to stop doing that project. So I was free, and I was looking for several projects. I was looking for my next project, in fact, and I had several ideas, like building an open source calendar tool for groups and enterprise, and I have another idea about making tools for online traders, and I have that idea to build again to take the best idea we had in the previous project, was to build again a production management tool. Because when in the previous project, the software we did that was the most used was a production tracker. I will explain it what it is just after, and so I said, okay, I have this idea. Maybe I have a lot of. I already have a network in that field. It's probably the better idea to follow. But I was still hesitating between my three options, and then my old friend of mine who founded his own studio called me without knowing what I was thinking about doing next, and he talked me about his studios and his the problems he faced. And he has a wonderful studio that is growing fast today, and who eventually do the best pictures made in France. And everything that he told me was so similar that to the problems we faced. Like it was like 6 or 7 years ago. I was say, okay, there is definitely something to do in that field, and there is probably a new issue to solve, and I have to dig further into that idea. So I called, emailed something like 20 or 30 studios in France. And on that list, 10 of them accepted that I visit them just to talk about the problems faced by CG Studios. And so I met them, and from my discussions, I noticed that that many studios were solving the same problems, but each other on their own side. They all have nice and creative solutions to fix their problems, but they tend to all solve the same problem again and again and again. And when you come from the software engineering world, you can quickly notice the main issue. It's simply that there is not this culture that we have in software engineering, that people can share knowledge and share tools they build to bring the whole industry to another step. So by doing CGWire, I wanted to build a production tracker, which is basically a project management tool for building a movie. But I wanted to make this a little bit more wider by fostering a collaboration among studios around problematics related to the infrastructure required to build a movie. And so the first brick for that is the production tracker Kitsu, because what is interesting with production tracking is that basically it's a web application that allows people to list all the tasks that have to be built to the movie, and to dispatch this task to everyone in the studio. And it allows for the CG artists to publish the previews, the result of their work, so they can be reviewed, and feedback can be sent to them, and they can iterate until they have the right picture, or they have the right asset published for the final movie. and it already has a notion of improving collaboration inside the studio. So it's collaboration is really at the heart of the project. And so the first brick is to build this software that allows to everyone in the studio to talk together and to build to be more efficient in their work, and communicate better, and in the end make better movies. The second brick is to bring that collaboration outside of the studio. So for that, we just mimic what we see, what we can see every day in the web software engineering world. And so for that, we made open source our production tracker. We open a chat for people to share about their experience and ask questions about technologies, so they can share everything they know or they want to share with each other. We open a list that is an awesome list that we know that exists for many technologies. Just in that list, we record all the open source projects that can be used to make a movie. It sounds a little bit simple, but when I went back to CG, when I started CGWire, I was not able to find easily open source solutions available to make a movie. So we made that list, and we already had 12 contributors that added stuff to that list. We made what we made too, and we opened a blog where we share all our knowledge about production management, pipeline tooling, and that's not something common too in the VFX and CG industry. So that's something that helps to, I think. Finally, when you open a blog, what happens is, it's great. You share content, you share knowledge, but it shows to others that they can do the same. It's most of the time people are not sure that it's the right thing to talk about something. They can be afraid of judgment. They can be afraid of their employers. They can be afraid of being ridiculous, of not being skilled enough to publish something. And when we do that, in some way, we show that it's possible to share things, and that it brings it's good for everyone. It brings new ideas to others, and it can help if you have some doubts about technology or a way to do. It can make you more confident seeing that others are doing it. So that's the second brick. And the third brick that we didn't work on already, but it's more related to vision, because this podcast is vision under construction. I can talk about it. So the third brick is to say, okay, we have maybe I should mention something. I talked a lot before about technical directors. What they work on in an animation when they are inside the studio is they work on what we call a pipeline. So it's similar to pipeline software. It's just to say, okay, you have several building steps. So for instance, you have to make the modeling of a character. You have to put bones in the character. It's named the rigging part, and you have to do the texturing, and to make sure that every step goes smoothly. The people, technical directors, build the pipeline so they can the result of one step can be sent automatically to another one and can be versioned properly, and etc. etc. And so what we do today is mostly to help improving the pipeline inside the studio, but the third break is more about bringing the pipeline outside of the studio, because CG artists are all freelance and they all move from studios to studios, and today there is nothing that connects studios between each other with artists when they are outside. And for instance, a simple problematics is that sometimes when a CG artist have a good collaboration with the studio, he leaves the studio, but sometimes he is looking for a job. He doesn't know that the studio has a new production, and they don't always call each other to come to ask the CG artist to come back. And it happens, and you have many things like that. Yes, there is no good reuse of what is produced in one place to another place. And yeah, it's so the third break is really about making things smoother when the CG artist is outside. So to bring more tools to the CG artist so he can manage better his relationship with the studios. That's it.
Actually, yeah, no, that's interesting, because you've brought to life a whole world of production that actually the average person knows nothing about, which is all of this, finding the work that's been done and the people who can do it. And every country has its own hierarchy. I don't know how this is done in the United States. I do know people in show business in France. I have a couple of friends who are actors or directors, and I know that it's actually, in the end, it's just kind of a small world. But the people who do the actual work, animators, people who are drawing, illustrators, all of that, it's fascinating that you've created something that I think helps everybody get together. So that's interesting. I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions or comments on that part, and maybe we'll move on, because it's we're halfway through. Maybe move on to your other little project. I meant little in that it's aside your project of the personal server project. Unless you want to show some slide. Do you want to show slides first of anything to do with?
I can show you maybe a little demo if you want.
Yeah, we could. Let's do that. If James was here, he would be calling for the demo.
Okay. So just
well, he's
yeah, okay, sorry. I was looking for the screen sharing button. Okay. Yes, I have to share my whole screen.
You can do that.
Okay.
That's me shared on your screen, so there's a little bit of lag. Okay.
Okay.
No, that looked like AshleyMadison.com for a second there. Okay. Inside joke. Never mind.
Okay.
I was going to say Slack.
Yeah, Slack. It looked like it might have been Slack. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yes. Our Slack. It's here where we talk and we share ideas, and we already have 160 people, 67 people. So yeah, it's can show you. So that was kind of thing I was talking about. We can share tools and ideas, and that's something that was happening not so much before. So I'm glad we achieved it. We achieved to make people talk more together. Let's go back to the demo. So the main idea is that you have to, so it's a production tracker software. It's like project management for movies. The main idea is that you have supervisors and CG artists. Supervisors want to have a whole overview of a production, and so they manage several projects. Here I will create a new one. So let's create VUC.
VUC project, of course.
Yeah. So there is a VUC project, and here we are going to add some assets, because when you do a movie, you want an animation movie. Before doing, okay, well, we are in English. When we do a movie, before doing the shots, we have to prepare all the stuff that will appear in the shots. So, for instance, if you have a shot with a character and a table and a chair, you want to build that table, that chair, and that character before working on the animation of the shot. So here I'm adding another character. I will add some props. So a table, a chair, and it's okay. And now I have my list of assets, and I can add a task, building steps. So the first step is going to be the concept. What we call concept is it's like design. It's like a 2D drawing of the element of the asset we want to work on. Then we do a modeling, and then we are doing shading. Basically, it's like adding texture. And here, so in lines, we have all the assets we want to build. And in columns, we have the building steps. And at the intersection, we have the task we are going to work on. So in a few minutes, I already generated like 12 tasks. And I can start working on them and say, okay, I want to assign the concept task. I will assign that task to Alicia. And I already set up my productions, and already assigned. I already dispatched tasks. It may sound like normal to you, but if you have tried the current production tracker available on the market, you would think that it's really fine, because with other tools, it would have required something like half an hour to understand how it works and to start working with it. And after that, so I talked about collaboration. On the other side, we have Alicia. She uses a dark theme, because she works with tools with a dark screen. So for her, it's more annoying. It's annoying to have a white screen. And when she connects, because she's a CG artist, she directly finds her to-do list and the tasks that were assigned to her. It doesn't mean she cannot access to the whole productions. If she can see the whole production too, because it's important that she has all the information available to her. But she cannot make modification on it. She can only tell that she is working on something. So here she is going to set her task to she's changed her status to work in progress. And on the other side, I can see that it's a work in progress stuff. Then she can say, okay, I'm done. And she can, she can choose a preview to send. And here she posts something. And on the other side, I can see that she posted something. I can tell her that it's wrong, that I want a video. And here is a concept important in movies. It's I send her a retake. Retakes matter a lot because it's related to budget. The more retake there is, the more the costs are bigger. And so for everyone in the production, it's important to track that. And when she showed that she got a retake, she can send the right file. All pictures are from Caminantes Lamingos, a Blender Foundation production. So she's sending a video. So now I can see that I received a video. We can play it. Oh, sorry. Okay, that's super fun. And now, sorry. And now I can say it's good. And on her side, she sees that it's good. She can tell how much time she spent on it. I don't know which one it was. Yeah, and that's it.
Okay, this is interesting, Frank, because I've actually collaborated with illustrators online and other people, photographers as well. And okay, so what we used was email. You know, in other words, someone would send me a bunch of illustrations. For example, I wrote a book, and I also did some other things, some videos requiring illustration, and so this was one person and me, so two people total, and we are talking to each other, and I'm saying, okay, that's good, but that actually should be a man, or some simple changes. But you're talking about projects that actually have a lot of, maybe a lot of actors, people who are touching this stuff, not acting. How many, what do you know about how many people are involved in the same project? Is this a production company with like 8 individual people working, or how does that all work? I'm just curious.
It really depends of the length of the movie and the quality of the movie. So it's obvious, but when you have a good quality, you need more people, and when it's longer, you need more people. But it can be you can have a feature film done by 10 people, and in the same way, you can have a feature film done by 200 people. So where it can really be tedious, it's when you do TV shows, because TV. What I show to you is that we have only 12 tasks, but here is just a small sample. But here with TV shows, you have the notion of episodes, and you can have quickly something like 50 or 60 episodes, because there are a lot of TV shows for children which require a lot of episodes. And here and in that case, you have a lot of tasks. Can quickly goes to 100,000 tasks that you have to dispatch to 200 people. So, and in that case, these are projects that can run during 2 years. And in that case, the production is very speedy. It's like you have there are quotas for animators, so they have to every day to produce a given amount of seconds, and it can be very can be very industrial. In fact, and sometimes they don't even finish the episode, and they just ship because they have so many things to do and in a so short time frame that sometimes they ship incomplete episodes, and that's why sometimes when you watch an animation movie, a cartoon, especially cartoons, when in the cinema, it's always every shots are always well done and well prepared. But if you look at cartoon TV shows like a manga, it's the reason, because the reason why you don't have you have some weird shots or repetitive things is just because they didn't ship the whole the whole episode. So when they mount the episode, they just have to reuse some shots, and even if it doesn't has any sense.
Okay, I'm going to just put up this. This is the web page, and if people are interested in this, if you're producing animated productions, you should go to cg-wire.com. This is what you'll see. There's apparently a free version you can try free, and of course, Franck is easy to contact. I'm sure if you need more information. We're going to move on to maybe your project. This is a company, of course, and we're going to move on to a project which I think would be of interest to a lot of people. And let me toggle the, I want to end the, here we go. Toggle the thing back to the camera. So you also have a thing that is an open source project, correct? Personal server?
Yeah, it's more than an open source project. It's something, currently I'm more focused on CGWire, so I just put the first steps of this project, but the main idea is to build a community around the practice of hosting his own application on his own server. Mm-hmm. And it came to me a long time ago when I first developed a distributed social network. And the idea was to have a web app that you host on your own server, on which you post statuses, and that web app was able to connect to other servers. When you had a contact, you didn't add a contact through his email. You just added the URL of his pod, and when you publish something, it was published to your contacts pods. On the technical aspect, it was okay, but was not so interesting. But when I did that project, what I noticed is that I was talking to my own server, and I was telling in some way, I was telling all what was happening to my server, or at least everything that I wanted to share with my contacts. And what was interesting too is that when my contacts talked to my server, they were saying stuff to it too. And by doing that, I was like, oh, it's interesting because my server knows a lot about me. Mm-hmm. And then I got interested in two movements named life logging and quantified self. And I discovered that people were kept on. So life logging is about recording everything you see during the day. So it can be when you have a diary, it's already life logging. It's like recording what happened to you during the day. But some people just wear a camera all the day and they record everything they see. And the second, and the quantified self is a practice that consists in having a lot of, in recording, in doing, how to say it, the idea is to have metrics about yourself, to build metrics about yourself, and it's like recording your heart rate, your steps, your everything you can about yourself. And so at that time I was thinking, wow, I have a personal server that knows a lot about me. People are trying to store many things about them. And maybe there is something to do and to go a little bit further. And I met my ex-co-founder a few years ago, a few years later, and he, at that time, when we met, it was about building a company named Cozy Cloud. And when we met, he talked to me about a more pragmatic approach than when you have a personal server, you can bring all your bank information. You can bring stuff from your connected device. You can send data from your smartphone to your server. And at that time, what we noticed was that in fact, we already all quantified ourselves without and life log ourselves without really knowing it. In some way, we talk about personal server, but it would be more accurate to say we have a personal swarm that is working for us and that is producing data. So the main actor of this swarm is probably your smartphone, but you have your computer, you have your laptop, you have your some bracelets that can record things, you have your watch, you have your now there are many connected objects. You have and you have your personal servers, your social networks, and everything which is social records a lot of things too about you. And so, in the end, we are all life loggers. We are all quantified self.
I have to coordinate all this. So here, this is the steps I took today, which is only 6,600 and it looks like 13 steps today. But basically, yeah, the watch knows a lot about me. Samsung knows a lot about me.
Yeah, Samsung. Yeah, but the thing is that we tend to waste that effort made by our personal swarm because all that data are spared among many different vendors and not. In fact, we don't really take advantage from it. You have some solutions if you use only Apple, only Samsung, or stuff like that. But mostly we don't really exploit it. Not exploit it. Not sure it's the right word, but we don't take really advantage of it. And with a personal server, you could say, "Oh, okay, Swarm, please put all the data." Put the copy of all that data into my personal server, and it just that's something we worked on with Cozy Cloud, but now we split and we decided to work more on cloud solution. But the idea was it's something that I want to revive. Was to say, okay, let's put all that data into one personal server. Something that we own because that's such a huge amount of data that privacy becomes really a big issue. I know it's not the era of privacy. Now most people don't care anymore about it, but it's so much data that we could put in a place that privacy become an issue, even for most not interested people in privacy. But the idea is that you put so many things into that server that at some point it could become something. What I mean by that is your personal server. Let's imagine you put all your swarm making at work and putting data during 10 years or 20 years into that server. So at some point your server knows all your health information. It knows everything, every picture you take, everything you see for hardcore life loggers. It knows everything you said, everything people say to you, everything that people say to you. So at some point, he can be an assistant, of course. He can help you to make automatic stuff for you. And can also be a kind of it can augment you in a meaningful way. In sense, it can be a second conscious. I would say in English, a conscience.
Consciousness.
A consciousness.
Yep.
So, and
you're practically advocating for some sort of consciousness transfer to a machine. Is that the singularity we're going at?
I want to ask, Frank, where is this hosted, what you're talking about? Where are you hosting? Would this be on DigitalOcean? Would it be at home? Would it be on a network server? Where is it? Where are you from?
There are two options. I had a discussion at FOSDEM one time, a short discussion with Richard Stallman, who told me that it should be at home. So for my personal usage, I have a server at home. I think it's the better option, probably. But another option, which is the most common, is to host it on to have a hosting provider who rent you a machine and that you and then host your own tool on it.
Right.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say is that, okay, you put everything into it and you have a second conscience that could augment your memory, because it allows you to not to forget a lot less the things. You can access to all the bad things. You can build, you can monitor yourself. You can build analytics like on a server. Could be interesting too. It could do stuff for you, of course.
I have a similar thing. It's called wife. She remembers everything.
yeah. That's fun, because I was thinking when I wrote a blog post in 2010 and say, okay, if we have this consciousness I have this consciousness for me, if my wife has the same consciousness, artificial consciousness, maybe that the two would fall in love each other, because they would be able, with all my memories and with all her memories, they could have like kind of feelings, kind of they could act like us. And it would be fun to see that there are some affinities, some interactions between each other. But I don't know if you follow me well on that idea, but it was.
There have been a lot of live stream and live blogging applications. I can't even remember the number of things that I've messed with, including self-hosted stuff. But in this day and age, well, for one thing, it's certain that collecting all this stuff on the cloud is a risk. So you're probably better off to self-host it. Where I live, and probably where you live, Frank, there's fiber. So, you actually could run a server on easily on your own internet connection. That wasn't true 5 or 10 years ago. It's certainly true now in most big cities, barring the United States, which has the worst internet of the Western world, actually, since they have no competition. Corrado, what are you saying?
No, yeah, exactly.
Agreeing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't understand why the United States it has such a poverty of internet connections, but that's
probably why America is where it is, because information is just fed through big channels and, again, corporations, and is controlled very strictly. Again, that's where America is, and sadly where Britain is going towards, because where America goes, Britain is the wagging tail of the big dog.
I sure hope we don't go there. Anyway, Frank, we're going to probably conclude, make sure that people go to, so I'm looking at a GitLab, gitlab.com/personal-server.community. Is that the best way to go look at this stuff?
Yeah, correctly is the best way. Just to conclude, I want to say, okay, so that's as you notice, that's a huge problem to solve. Not sure it's a problem, but that's a huge something to work on. That's why I want to foster a community more than building another tool for it, right. And to allow people who are interested in that idea, in that field, to work together and to build projects and to help to go further. And that's why I want to talk more about communities than about a single project.
Okay, and I'm going to try to, okay, that looks like it fit on the screen there, gitlab.com/personal-server.community. That's one place you can get started. Yeah. I think this is really interesting stuff. I think that we need, oh, Hank is drinking Coke Zero. I was wondering what that was. There we go. We have the answer. I'm just talking to make sure that this GitLab URL stays on the screen long enough for people to look at it. I'm going to dictate it again for those of you who are listening in audio, which is cheaper bitwise. And that would be gitlab.com/personal-server-community. This is an interesting thing as far as the open source and the whole movement goes. And I think that's fantastic. Frank, we're at 59 minutes. So I think I'm going to thank you for joining us. Thank Hank for thinking of this. And let's see if anybody, Corrado or Michael or anyone else who's on here,
thank you.
Have questions.
Well, I have just a little comment. Even if I self-host such big amount of data and it's in my house, I wouldn't be probably comfortable to have everything, all my life recorded. anyway, that's my problem. I have some things that I would really love to forget.
Well, you have the right to be forgotten now because Google. By the way, quick kind of common topic here. I just received a thing. I do not have Medicare. I'm an American, so I have Social Security. I do not have Medicare, but Medicare wrote me to say that they are removing the Social Security number. Hank, you may know this, or Michael might have known. Well, you're not on Medicare yet, but don't worry, it'll come if you live long enough. Anyway, the point is that Social Security numbers, I got you, Corrado. Social Security numbers have been used for ID theft. Okay, so my point is in mentioning this is that I just got a notice from them saying, "Hey, we're not going to use this number anymore because your Social Security number in the United States is a big factor in ID theft." So it's related to the idea of having all this stuff on your server. Corrado, you could curate what is on this famous personal server and your live stream. So you could edit out all of the unpleasantness that may have occurred in your life. But I don't know. I don't feel like hiding stuff that I do, but I'm not sure I'm going to be Instagramming it either. So I'm kind of in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. I don't put on Twitter everything I eat, breakfast,
Why not? If you
lunch,
got
and dinner.
recipes.
Because I'm not so self-absorbed.
Yeah.
I prefer to absorb information rather than distribute information. I prefer to get stuff in my head.
Yeah, I do wonder about that. I wonder whether we're going to go back to something a little less self-absorbed. I have friends who are on Instagram, and a good friend of mine says, well, I got like 20 or 30 comments on my post on blah blah blah, and I'm just thinking, you know what, you should probably be spending more time on topic X. I don't want to get into anything personal, but people who are trying to learn about certain things. If you're trying to learn to code, you should probably get off Instagram, learn to code. There's also a lot of interesting news coming from Facebook, Instagram / WhatsApp, but we won't get into this now. Anyway, back to Frank Rousseau. Thank you so much. Thanks to Hank.
Thank you.
Appreciate having you, and hopefully people will go and see your stuff, Frank.
Thank you a lot.
Okay. Thanks to everybody who participates and supports us. We don't ask for money, by the way. So when I support, I mean, just watch what we're doing or listen to it. We will see you again next week. We have no idea what we're going to be talking about. Michael Graves, any ideas? And he says no. All right. Anyway, thanks to everybody who participates in this. And we will, oh, wait a minute. I have an outro video. That's right. We will see you later.
Cheers.
Yeah.